vote on all of these mugshots, and if you vote for this little kid with the axe, he could be on a billboard. And that's like high stakes, and it's also, it's a completing loop of social engagement there. And they're constant, and they're very targeted and strategic about what they're doing. They're like going after the Latino community or this community with specific social media campaigns. So for us, that's new. We've always competed against other news organizations, but other organizations that have their own message that they want to manage their own message going out.
So we're breaking down verticals, and it's more about mind share, right? You only have so much time.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have an
Yeah, I don't want to repeat too much. I mean, I think definitely national outlets are terrific. I think the New York Times, what they do in a digital social space is just really impressive, especially when they drill down on style and Washington and finance and politics. Really well done. Sites I think are really kind of different, really engaging well with people. The Onion, I think the Onion is really smart, really kind of a way to kind of tweak where people are thinking and how they're thinking, and sometimes it really hits home. Their posts and messages. Obviously, they're ironic and funny, but sometimes they just really kind of capture the zeitgeist of it all. This is excellent. If you're not familiar with that, you can check it out. Grantland is also excellent as well in terms of engaging, capturing things in a broader scale. A lot of great ways, but those are kind of the three that sort of stand out to me beyond the traditional legacy stuff. HuffPo is great, Slate's long, all this as well.
Oh, and Fusion, which is new, but they do amazing stuff on Instagram.
I love Skim This. You guys heard of that?
Yeah. That was by two women.
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
You didn't mention Reddit. Anybody want to talk about Reddit?
We look at Reddit a lot, and our reporters love Reddit. They're like addicted to it, where they watch this and watch that, and I don't know. There's only so much like bike theft stuff I can take. Where, posting photos of like sawed off this. I'm a bike theft victim, so I don't want to see more about it. But I think it's a good place to mine a little bit. It's kind of got that hyper local. I heard about this and answers to this. Some of the threads kind of head sideways, and then some stuff is sort of gets recirculated, and you sort of almost have this internet deja vu, like, did I see it? Did I not see it? The story is not a story. And we did something about a month ago. We made a change where we had to kind of change some of the URL structures of some of our stories. Some stories about a year ago basically got their URL changed in the middle, which doesn't really matter. It's a technical thing. But because the way people kind of scan the internet, there were a couple of Reddit threads reposting some of our reports saying, did you see what KGW just reported like a year or two ago? Yeah. And no one was stopping it. No one was saying, hey, you idiot, like this already happened. Like, didn't you read the actual story? You opened it. It says February 2014. Nothing changed in that. So I don't know. It's another source to look at, but I'm not a huge Reddit fan, but many in our newsroom are. It's an understatement.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Thursday last week the world changed with the FCC ruling related to net neutrality. And
I thought you were talking about the dress. I'm just kidding. I'm joking, it was the same day. I didn't really think you were.
I'm curious how it's going to impact your organization, and I'm thinking about the whole social media conversation. And the FCC had gone the way they had originally planned in terms of really restricting it. There's technical issues to the fast heading slow pipe thing, but a lot of the social media stuff potentially could have gone away because there wouldn't be free and open access to the internet. And I'm kind of curious what the conversation around net neutrality was in your newsrooms, what you guys felt about it, where you think where it's going to go for you now that the FCC's rule, depending on future questions.
Great question.
I mean, other than it being a news story and people that I cover and stuff like that, we're all talking about it and things like that. It hadn't filtered down to us in terms of like how is this going to change what ACBJ does on various levels. So
it was a pretty big discussion for us in our newsroom, for our company as well. I mean, we're the kind of company that's big enough that we might get impacted in some way by it. I think that I, as a journalist, and a lot of my colleagues are breathing a sigh of relief. But I'll tell you that it's a cautionary one, because I don't have a lot of confidence personally that things will kind of stay in that direction, with the direction of Congress and the courts and regulations. A 3-2 vote on a divided panel does not give me a lot of hope, because of election upcoming, courts changing. I think there's a real concern about the internet's heading up in that divided way. I really think it's a valid concern. I think people should speak out and they should lobby to kind of protect that and keep it open. It's a valid issue that's still under threat. We can't. And in our newsroom, we talked about it, in the corporate levels, we've been talking about it's a serious issue.
I'm just curious from the technical, what was the, in the local companies here that, Netflix and.
Well, mostly the people the conversations that I was following on Twitter and things like that, most people were at least pleased that for the time being it seemed to work in the way that they wanted it to work, but I'm sure it's still going to be a continuing fight.
How do you report on that? I mean, it seems like the panel is decidedly not objective about it. They all want it to stay one way. How do you report on it and maintain that internet objectivity?
The news is the news. I mean, my colleagues will agree, when you're a journalist, you cover the news and you get balance and you figure out what it is. It doesn't mean you can't care about sort of where the news is going or trends in the agency or trends that happen that affect all of us as consumers. I don't want to pay more for this or pay less for this or be affected by that. But, when it comes to presenting news, as I mentioned before, we curate, we analyze, we discuss, we talk about it. On net neutrality that day, I think we put up a great Q&A right away saying, what does this mean? And the Q&A was from USA Today's tech reporter, and it was really pretty well balanced, saying, well, on the plus it means this, on the other side it means this, and here's some of the benefits. Here's why it might not be a good thing to have this. Here's why companies are pushing for it, what they would get out of it, how that can help you as a consumer. And there's definitely, as they say, three sides to every story. So you want to kind of explain that? I think it's a good question, but I think our job is to be a curation source that you can trust, not be in a way that sort of you can tell people.
A quick question about my job for social media, and I was interested on Europe's anti-Facebook. There's been stories circulating internationally about Europe wanting to clip the use of Facebook. That's number one. And then number two is case studies. They talk about interaction in schools and what's the current case studies on journalism coming out of maybe or the working school or university of things or school.
Speak for you.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, also case studies and just from what I see, I mean, journalism is changing so quickly that I feel like education is also sort of needing to keep up with how quickly social media is changing. Susan talking about how often she has to change things with social media. I mean, it's difficult because you have to read so many articles. It's like Google Plus changed everything yesterday, and so everything you've prepared about that. There's one study that I'll mention. It's not from a education institution, but the American Press Institute just did a big, basically research study with all of these thought leaders from different news organizations across the country about video and basically what is the ecosystem of video, how does social media come into that, mobile usage, how do these social networks come into play given that they obviously really want video to be a thing. Everybody from a institution standpoint, obviously you get more ads or more money for a video ad than you can for a display ad. So there's kind of a whole conversation there. So I would refer to that one as probably the best case study I've read in a long time, which really changed a lot about the way we think about our video and also the way we think about our social media.
That's on Facebook in Europe.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the privacy changes happening over there are fascinating and important. I think what's happening in Spain and other countries, the kind of crackdown, are extremely interesting to see how the social media companies respond to that, if they pull out entirely, if they change their attitude as well. It's interesting, Europe, is a conglomeration of countries, and each one sets its own rules, and many of them are intent on taking on Google, taking on these companies, making changes, and I could see a ripple effect happening across Europe and across other countries as well. I think that it won't make the inroads here in America because that's where these companies are started. That's when we have sort of a strong attachment to how they behave. I can see it elsewhere. I think that the more logical change will be the development in other countries of competing platforms. That's happened in China and India, competing platforms that basically serve the needs within that country. And so if you're in Belgium or in Spain or in France, you don't have a need to be a Facebook critic because you have a equivalent in that country that is sort of more tailored to the mindset. And I think there's a bit of an anti-American backlash as well.
Really?
Involved in that. Not that we don't deserve that
That's
backlash
right.
for many ways, but I think there's certainly some of that. It's a fascinating issue. I think it's something to watch, and as you travel overseas, you certainly see people who have strong thoughts about the intrusion of social media.
Yeah.
The other thing too, though, to remember is things are changing and there's lots of digital stuff happening, but like for my job, there's still a lot of FaceTime. Like I'm out at events, I'm out meeting with people, and I'm talking to people. Like I'm not getting everything just from, Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. Like I'm still out there face-to-face talking to people, and so that part of journalism I don't think has changed, and it's just how you get to people that is different. So I think that's just something to keep in mind too.
Good point.
I have a quick question. This is more of a kind of self-serving question, but I'm just interested as a reporter, what are the types of things that really annoy you when people are approaching you about stories, and what are the good things that we should be coming to with as far as content, and what are the things that you're really looking for and need from people who are providing you stories?
That's something that really kind of hurts most newsrooms I've been at, and I've been at 10 in the last 20 years, is incomplete information where you're sort of missing the other side. Someone sends you a press release about something, some new, our store now, sells flowers, but meanwhile, like the back half burned down yesterday, or so you're missing the rest of the story. You feel like, you're learning something that's not quite everything. I'd rather just get a better sense of context. That's what's usually missing from most things submitted to us in the general context. The other part is the understanding of availability and accessibility. Too many people are still embargoing stuff. I'm not sure what that word even means nowadays anymore, but too much like, well, can't say this until then, can't report this until then. And most news organizations that I know sort of just kind of shrug and either say, well, okay, we're not interested then, come back to us when we are, or they ignore the embargo and they move ahead, or somebody else does. So it's a sense of sort of trying to control the news either by not being contextual or by being limiting in terms of access and availability. And if you have something to share, let us know and we'll respond back and tell you what we can jump on and move on. If we don't, we don't. A lot of competition for news source time as well. For us, all of us, we get bombarded all day long with ideas, and it's how do we filter that a little bit out. It's unfortunate. Certainly the sources we like get we listen to and have the conversations with more, the people who we've worked with before. It happens again and again as well, and you just kind of have to break through. But I think being contextual and being open and available is a helpful sign.
I think for us, honestly, having so many ways for people to contact us can be a little overwhelming. So for me, like from a PR standpoint, it kind of just bugs me when people are like thinking, oh, I'll be, fresh and cool, and I'll tweet them this press release. And for us, we want to be accessible over Twitter. I mean, that's why we're there. But, more accessible for the people who aren't like writing up a press release and don't have a PR person, contacting us on behalf of their business. Like, I don't know why those PR people are necessarily like sending us a Facebook message with a press release in it when they already know the reporters that they need to contact about that specific story, so they could go directly to those people, and they know how to email them to us or some of these more traditional ways. Because for us, like Facebook messages that we get a lot of times that we'll end up using, I mean, we pay a lot of attention to that type of stuff. So some people, like, we had a story about, that just someone's sister was like, my brother just started going to Reed College, and he's a freshman, and someone stole his car with all his belongings in it, and this is totally unfair. And they're just like an average person who's just ranting and mad that someone took advantage of their brother. That's the kind of stuff we want to see over social media, because that's who we're there to engage with. Not necessarily to get the press release that was sent to like 80 people in our newsroom already. We don't really need that sent to our like brand organization social media on every different channel. So I think being really specific about that, plus a lot of people, I think what you can do in terms of how to do it better is really to know about, if you have these press releases stuff, I think the best thing you can do is know the actual people who report on your beat. A lot of people come to me with like, I started this, farming preschool. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. We have like a whole emerging education reporter. So that is somebody who you can look at our website and see every reporter and all their beats, and you can look and say, okay, these 3 people cover education. Here's the education editor. These are people who would be more interested and are filtering much less than like the editor of the Oregonian or, you know, whoever manages the social media account.
I'd just add one thing. I think people would be surprised to realize just how much in newsrooms, how much of the things we do is based on the interactions we have in our daily lives. So that the few hundred people who work at each organizations, what we encounter through our own personal social networks, through our friends, through our word of mouth, through our spouses, through our kids at their school and their parents, and that kind of interaction, we are all engaged in the community, and whether it's a sales rep somewhere, or marketing, or a reporter, or an editor, or a leader, or department head, whatever we are, we're engaged in many of those ideas become part of our discussion points. And so but collectively, at media organizations in Portland, there are several thousand people working at them. And those people are all people who are actually real people living in Portland, interacting with you in different ways. And those are the people who are, those ideas sort of bubble up and come, and they probably provide 80% of what happens in most newsrooms is ideas that sort of come together through some interaction that someone has had. So it's not rocket science. It's making connections and, you know, old-fashioned word of mouth a little bit.
I think the other thing too is like, you know, we're working in our newsrooms to develop an intuition about what people in Portland want to read, what people in Portland want to share, you know, what people in Portland enjoy reading, enjoy talking about with other people, what is controversial in our community right now. So, I mean, for anybody who's pitching a story, I think you can develop the same intuitions and look at the same public information that we're using to, and I mean, some of it's not totally public, some of it's like research or other things that we're doing inside our organizations to find out more about our audiences, but a lot of it now with social media, you can see, you know what your friends are talking about. You can find out more about what people who care about beer specifically want to read about if you're a, you know, microbrewery. So developing your own intuition in that way too, so that you aren't pitching us like we rolled out a new hours or something. When you have a better story and that's like, you know, a more human interest story or something like that.
So my question is on hashtags. So you guys use them and utilize them, but over the past few years, I feel like hashtags have just gotten way out of control. They don't even make sense anymore, and people are just jumbling things together. So do you think they're still going to go on where they can be used, especially in the media, for stories, or do you think that they're going to kind of just, people are going to get tired of them and they won't be useful anymore, even in the next couple of years?
Great question.
I think they peak.
Yeah.
They peak. I mean, I think you're right. Half the ones you see are sort of bizarre and odd. And I mean, on my personal Facebook posts, I use made-up ones all the time, and I just some of my friends, and we all live that way. But I think that it's, you know,
You are personally really.
I am. I'm contributing to it. Contributing to it. Hashtag this is bad. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's become almost a joke as well. I think they're somewhat useful for brands. They're useful for things that are ongoing. There's a national one we were part of last fall called Facts Not Fair about Ebola, and just trying to get people to kind of realize what was facts and what was that. I think if it's tied to something and the point is good, I think one-time ones are just tough and they become sort of almost self-defeating. You know, I think that it's all about sort of the engagement, and you really need to have that hashtag. And Twitter search tools are getting so much better. Social search tools are working so much better. There's not a strong need to have that. It's one way to find stuff. And if you wanted to, after Super Bowl, see what was trending, what was happening, you didn't need to use whatever the official Super Bowl hashtag was, which was something bizarre probably with some Roman numerals in it. You could just look up other links as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't do, I think it's peaked in my opinion.
I would disagree with that. I mean, I think, to be honest, that anybody who had an impression that the hashtag was going to like get your message out to hundreds of people was probably under the wrong impression. You know, they didn't really have the right concept of how people were using Twitter, because even when hashtags were really, really cool, nobody was spending all their time, I'm going to just read this hashtag. You know, they were maybe dipping in for a second or getting more context on something that they'd seen. But I think they actually still work very well, just in terms of a tagging system that aggregates information together. I mean, for me, a lot of times, like if I'm watching The Biggest Loser and someone comes back and they're like really skinny and it's like disconcerting, and you're like, I wonder how other people are reacting to this. Like, there's an easy way for me to find that information because of a hashtag. It's true that search engines are a lot better, so I can just put in Biggest Loser and see what people are tweeting, but I mean, there's a lot of different ways that hashtags are used. Like for the Oscars, this organization, Misrepresentation, they're a really small organization that did this documentary about, basically how women are misrepresented in media. And they started a campaign on Instagram called Ask Her More, hashtag Ask Her More. And I mean, it was like really small for them, but they were able to get other people like Reese Witherspoon and Mindy Kaling and all these people to be a part of that hashtag, and like that advocacy actually had an effect on how they questioned women on the red carpet for the Oscars. So, I mean, I think there are tons of examples still of how it's well used, and people want to see. They can't search what are people asking women at the Oscars on Twitter, but they can get a concept of, okay, how are people having this conversation? By seeing that hashtag and thinking, gosh, I wonder if people are making legitimate points about how we talk to women in media. And then here's this whole hashtag where I can read about that and be a part of that conversation that isn't necessarily accessible through search.
No, I don't honestly have a strong opinion either way on hashtags. I use them sometimes, but then other times I'm just using Twitter search because it's a little bit easier now. So
I think it just depends on your purpose, truly. There are certain instances where it's really effective, but if you think it's effective for everything, of course you're going to think it's ineffective.
Right. Okay, I want to thank everybody. This was a great panel, and thanks for all the great questions. And if any of you are going to be around after this, we'll take some extra questions. So thank you very much.